Remarkable split-screen day in this surreal presidential campaign. Former President Trump in the Manhattan courtroom hearing Stormy Daniels testify about their encounter and his hush money payment, as President Biden took the podium at the Holocaust Museum in Washington with a nationally televised speech taking on anti-Semitism. We're going to cover it all this morning. Aaron Katersky starts us off from the courthouse. Good morning, Aaron.
George, good morning to you. The trial is not in session on Wednesdays, but the jury has a lot to think about after Stormy Daniels described in rather explicit detail her alleged sexual encounter with Donald Trump back in 2006. These were the details, George, that prosecutors said Trump paid to bury before voters went to the polls in 2016. Stormy Daniels captivated the jury from the moment she entered court, not done up like in photos of the adult film actress, but in a plain black hooded cardigan and glasses, hair up. She described a 2006 encounter in Donald Trump's hotel suite that he says never happened. Her detail vivid, from the black and white tile floor and the gigantic flower arrangement in the foyer to the silk or satin pajamas she said Trump was wearing. I told him to go change, and he obliged very politely. At one point, Daniels said she asked him, "What about your wife?" He said, "Oh, don't worry about that. We don't even sleep in the same room." At another point, she said Trump was talking so much about himself. She said, "Are you always this rude, arrogant, and pompous?" Her testimony similar to what she told 60 Minutes in 2018.
He quit talking about himself, and he asked me things, and I asked him things, and it just became, like, a more appropriate. He's like, "Wow, you are special. You remind me of my daughter."
Later, Daniels said she went to use the bathroom. She recalled peering into Trump's toiletry bag. And when she emerged, she testified Mr. Trump had come into the bedroom and was on the bed in his boxer shorts and T-shirt. She said she felt the room spin in slow motion and then thought, "Oh my God, what did I misread to get here?" As her testimony about having sex with Trump became more graphic, the defense objected again and again. This was the first time Trump had been face-to-face with Daniels in more than a decade, and the exchange made him angry. During a break, the judge telling Trump's lawyer he is cursing audibly and he is shaking his head visually. But the judge also said, "I think the degree of detail that we're going into here is just unnecessary." The defense sought a mistrial, calling Daniels' testimony extraordinarily prejudicial and totally irrelevant to this case. Prosecutors argued this is what would have been told to the American people had Trump not paid Daniels $130,000 in hush money less than 2 weeks before the 2016 election. Daniels called the payoff the best thing that could happen. "I would be safe and the story wouldn't come out." "Why didn't you ask for more money?" prosecutors asked. "Because I didn't care about the money," she said. But on cross-examination, the defense insisted you've been making money by claiming you had sex with Donald Trump for more than a decade. Trump's attorney asked, "The whole story was made up, wasn't it?" Daniels answered, "None of it is made up." The defense pressed on. "You were looking to extort money from President Trump, right?" "False," Daniels answered. Stormy Daniels is going to return here to court tomorrow for more cross-examination, George.
And Aaron, former President Trump's legal strategy is delay. It looks like that's what he's going to get in the classified documents case.
Yeah, sure does. The trial over classified documents was never going to start this month in Florida as scheduled. The judge has now formally scrapped the May 20th trial date, but she said she's not going to set a new one until she resolves all the legal issues that she's let pile up over the last couple of months. It makes it highly unlikely there will be any trial down in Florida, George, before November.
Okay, Aaron, thanks very much. Speaking of our chief legal analyst, Dan Abrams. Dan, at its heart, this Manhattan trial is about falsified documents. Stormy Daniels' testimony may have been interesting, but why is it important?
Well, first of all, she was involved in the negotiation for the $130,000, right? As a technical legal matter, that's the most important part of her testimony, is what did she know about why the deal was being made, about how the deal was being made. That is specifically relevant to the motivation here. Was it to try to impact the election? But there's a secondary factor here, and that is that Donald Trump and his team are denying that it ever happened. And I think that does then make that an issue in the case. Why? Because when you're talking about the negotiations surrounding the $130,000, it's relevant whether it happened or not. Does it mean that the deal wouldn't have been made one way or the other? No. But in terms of understanding the context around the deal, if he had just said, yes, this happened, I think that would make her testimony more irrelevant. I would think the defense would have a better argument that so much of her testimony shouldn't have been admitted. But the minute he denies it, I think he makes that an issue.
The judge did not like hearing the details in the testimony, did not like seeing Donald Trump's response.
I'm sure no one really liked hearing the details, right? I mean, this was pretty, very specific stuff. But look, there's a difference between saying, I think we went too far here, and saying I'm going to grant a mistrial, right? Yeah, I think everyone agreed there was probably too much detail. She didn't need to get into the specifics of the sex, etc. But when the defense then said, okay, this is overtly prejudicial and we think that there should be a mistrial, that's a very different standard, much, much higher there. And I'm not surprised that the judge in the end said no to that.
Bottom line, what does it mean for the case?
Look, I think down the line, it's not going to be the most important witness, right? She's certainly the most salacious. I'm sure the jurors were fascinated to some degree, but when it comes to whether there's going to be a conviction or not, it's not going to come down to Stormy Daniels, although I do think there are going to be a couple of credibility questions we're going to see moving forward with the cross-examination as to whether the jurors believe her account.
Dan Abrams, thanks very much.